Welcome to Connect Canyons, a podcast sponsored by Canyon School District. This is a show about what we teach, how we teach, and why. We get up close and personal with some of the people who make our schools great. Students, teachers, principals, parents, and more. We meet national experts too. Learning is about making connections. So connect with us.
Welcome, everybody. This is Connect Canyons, and I'm your host today. This is Canyon Superintendent Rick Robbins. And last year, we did a Super Bowl podcast, and it went so well. We had lots of hits on the podcast, and people were really interested in it. And so we decided to do it again. And this year, we're gearing up for Super Bowl 59, where the reigning champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, take on the Philadelphia Eagles coming up on February 9th. So this year, I'm just so excited to be here with everybody. We've got quite a star-studded team today joining us for the podcast. And I'm joined today by a couple of our coaches in Canyon School District, Brighton head coach Casey Sutera, who led our Bengals to the semifinals in 5A, as well as our Corner Canyon Chargers head coach Eric Kjar, who led our Chargers to another 6A state championship. So we're excited to have both of them here with us. And then we have a very special guest today, former BYU and NFL star, Bryan Kehl, who's with us today. And we're honored. Not only is he a great champion on the Gridiron, but also an alumni of Canyon School District and a former Brighton Bengal himself. So we're very excited to have him with us. Before we get into the game, guys, I want to just talk a little bit about football in general. A few years back, I don't know if you're familiar with a video put out by former Alabama head coach Bill Curry called The Huddle. And in The Huddle, Coach Curry talks a lot about the impact of football and what it did for him on his life, and just the point about crossing the lines onto the field and that brotherhood. And we all know, the game of football brings us together. No matter what our backgrounds are, it does so much for us. And I know today we've got hundreds, if not thousands of kids that participate, not just in football, but in sports in general in our high schools, especially in Canyon School District, that really look up to all of you. And I just want you to reflect a little bit about that impact football's had on your life, and maybe some experiences that you might want to share in a couple of minutes to get this thing started. Coach, we'll start with you.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I think that part's always the special part about it. When we talk about our kids, is they're going to move on or is they're going to play high school football, the best part of high school football or football in general is being around your teammates and being associated with them, and the memories you have. Even, back when I played, I don't remember necessarily touchdowns or successes and things like that. That stuff was important, but just the bond you have with your guys, your teammates, the players around you, and then continuing to coach now. And we talk to our kids. We bring all of our seniors in after our last game, and we talk quite a bit about that and spend some time discussing that with them and what they've built and how close they've come together. And the cool part is you get to watch it as a coach and see the growth that they all have, and to see them kind of bond, and then also create like good habits, hopefully, that are going to carry them through, and just how much it teaches you. There's a lot of hard parts of football too that teach you. And after you've worked through those, and the success you have after you work through those, you kind of build off of that and create some good successes and build confidence. It's a fun, tough game. And I think that's why I continue to do it now. And I'm sure, Coach is the same way, Coach Sutera. So
we so appreciate that, Coach. We were talking a little bit before the podcast about the challenges that society is facing and our communities are facing, and all of those skills that you're talking about really, are building young people that are really going to be the next generation that, if we want to maintain our way of life, those are the types of skills that we need our young people to develop. Coach Sutera, any thoughts?
Yeah, like Coach said, I think the biggest thing is the life lessons you learn through playing athletics or football, particularly. For me, I'm an individual that had a pretty cush life as far as I didn't have a ton of adversity. I have great parents. I always knew I was going to have food on the table, but I learned a lot of adversity through through football and athletics. So like for me, and I know there's a lot of kids that maybe it's the other way, that that's their place where they have some stability, right? And, that's really important. Just the work ethic side, right? The training and the work that you have to put in throughout the year to be good and successful on the field. That's what they think at the time that's really important, but it's actually what you're getting out of it and learning from that work that you put in up until that point. And just friendships and things like Coach Kjar I worked with for 9 years at Jordan and at Corner, and we're still great friends. And all my teammates, Bryan, I coach with, our boys play on the same team in Little League, and we coach together. It's just like the camaraderie that you have and the people that you meet throughout it. Teammates I have from college and high school, just still staying in contact with them. It's pretty amazing. Like I said, I'm partial, obviously, and we're partial here, but I think it's the greatest game around. I think it's a sport where it's an ultimate team game where there's something for everybody. There's a role for everybody, no matter what your athletic ability status are or stature. Okay, there's something for everybody, and it takes everybody to work together to achieve that. And I think that's another thing that you can learn, because that's ultimately, when you have a job one day, you're going to have to work together with someone and have a boss and have to be able to do those things. So,
yeah, that's great advice. I think no matter how many years go by, as Coach Kjar mentioned, you forget about the scores and whatnot, and even your records, but you don't ever forget the relationships, and those carry on. Bryan, what's your thoughts?
I think Casey hit it on the head. All sports are great. They're all phenomenal, fantastic. We're biased. Football's the greatest.
Right.
It's a fact. I'm sorry.
No disagreement here.
It's just the greatest thing in the world. I used to say when I played, there was this phrase that I would say, I'm not a football player. It's just what I do, but not who I am. And it's kind of funny. I kind of took pride in that while I was playing. And it's funny now, it's been 12 years that I've been done playing, 11 years, something like that. Anyway, and it's just fun. I still have dreams. Vivid dreams, real dreams that I'm playing again, and I'm so excited. And then I wake up and it's a dream, and I'm all sad. I'm like, oh man, it's so real this time. It's just inside of me, and it's one I never knew how much I would miss it. And that's like a lot of things in life. You appreciate it, and you really appreciate something when it's taken away from you. And football is just unique. It's different than all the sports. I still play pickup basketball all the time. There's no pickup football. Like when you're done, you're done. And it's a short window. It's the greatest thing in the world. And all the things that these fine coaches talked about, just the camaraderie, the life lessons, the discipline, the adversity, the brotherhood, just everything. And it really shapes you and forms you. And like I said, just back to the start, it's just the greatest. It's the greatest thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It reminds me of, just to all of your points, how finite football is. And I think that's what brings our communities together every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It is limited. It only happens once a week. Like other sports, it's usually multiple times a week. But with football, it really is a community event every weekend that we get together and celebrate. And, we get to see all kinds of students perform and really demonstrate their passions, whether it's football or cheerleading or the band or drill team or the student section. I mean, all of it just brings our culture together. To wrap that up, just for all of our young people out there listening, if you had to give yourself advice at age 14, 15 and thinking about your future, what would that advice be to yourself if you could go back and say, hey, here's a little bit of advice that I'd give you at this time in your life? Now that you know what you know about life experience and going forward in your with your families and your life and your careers, what would that advice be?
Probably what comes to mind, just first and foremost, is being confident in yourself, believing in yourself, being your own best ally or best advocate. I think that when I was young, and even not young, like as an adult, I think sometimes you see where you doubt yourself at times, and just allowing that to creep in, just trying to eliminate that as much as you can. And especially young kids, you see it with them too. Some of them don't hurt for confidence. There's plenty that do. And I think just truly believing in yourself, I think, is very powerful. And I wish I would have learned that a little earlier.
Yeah, great advice, Coach Sutera.
Yeah, like Coach said, I think that's one thing that I, as a young kid, maybe lacked a little confidence. And as you go through, and I think you said, football's helped me with that, and coaching's definitely helped me with just developing that. But I remember trying to just you want to impress people and you wanted to do things, but it's just like, be true to yourself, and the hard work pays off for sure. That you put the work in day to day and good things will happen. And it's not always perfect, and days aren't always perfect, and you're going to have good days and bad days, but that consistency and that work ethic pays off in the end. So
awesome. Brian.
That's tough. There are so many things that I would have done differently. And there's funny that people are always like, I have no regrets. And there's that phrase that people use, and I'm like the opposite. I have so many regrets.
Right.
Like, tell me what I don't regret. There's so many things I would do differently. Hindsight 2020. And so it's hard to narrow just one. But honestly, I was a really hard worker and always had been. But if I could go back, I would have worked even harder. I think at the end of the day, I don't think there's any person that would be like, well, I worked too hard. Like, I just don't think you can do it. Like, you could always do more. I could have done more film study. I could have had better nutrition. I mean, there's just so many areas. And like we've talked about, that window is so short, and when it's closed, it's closed. There's no opening. So I look back at like the player I was as a high school football player and a college football player and a pro football player. And in each of those arenas, I did a lot, and I didn't even scratch the surface. There's so much more that I could have done. And so that's what I would say to young kids is like, if you're passionate, and this is anything, it's, the violin, whatever, anything that people are passionate about, I don't think you'll ever regret working too hard.
Yeah. Well, this is so inspiring and humbling for me to hear. Those of you out there that are searching for purpose or wondering what does each day bring, I hope you'll take this great advice from these amazing men that have achieved at such a high level. But I think it shows us all that you really do have to trust the process, right? You got to focus on day to day and the process of getting to where you want to be. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to share those thoughts. I want to get to the game. Super Bowl Sunday is coming up. And first off, there's so many storylines to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, I just wrote down a few off the top of my head. The fact that the game's in New Orleans, coming off of such a tragic, situation, kind of shows us all a little bit about the resilience of our country and going forward, and the city of New Orleans hosting the Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley, chasing Eric Dickerson's single season rushing record and the whole thing in the playoffs, and he was sat out, didn't get the record, and really putting team before himself. We understand he made the decision to do that. Says a lot about his character. There's that storyline. Of course, all the Swifties in the world are excited because Taylor Swift's going to be at the Super Bowl. The NFL's definitely capitalized on that. The referee conspiracy. Do the Chiefs actually, get breaks?
Yes.
Brian says yes. Does the Michael Jordan rules apply with Pat Mahomes and being a former NFL player? Brian can probably attest to that. And so you can talk to any of those. The one that really intrigues me, though, is weighing the Chiefs' dynasty. If the Chiefs pull this off, a three-peat that's never been done before, this is their 7th appearance in the Super Bowl. They're going for number 4. This is the Chiefs or the Eagles' 5th appearance. They've got 1 Super Bowl win. But where does the Chiefs' dynasty, and I'm a Raiders fan, so this is really, really hard for me to say. And the fact that they won the Super Bowl last year in Allegiant Stadium is even more painful. Mm-hmm. But I think we got to give them their due credit. Coach Reid, the Chiefs organization, their leadership, their owners, the Hunts. I mean, they've really figured this out, right? And especially when Andy Reid has a week to prepare, we know how difficult they are to beat. But if they pull this off, where does that stack them up against the legacy and the dynasty of the Patriots, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Steelers? The list goes on of NFL dynasties. Where do the Chiefs stack up in your mind? Or you can talk about some of these other storylines.
That's a lot.
I'll just throw this out there. What they've done is incredible, and I'm sick of it. I would like to see the Chiefs lose, but just because I'm like that guy that doesn't like to see the same team. I'm so sick of Alabama winning national championships. If I was a high school football coach, I'd be so sick of care. if I didn't live in Porter County Batteries, which I do, if I was somewhere else, I would be so sick of this guy just winning every single, like I'd be sick of it, right? What the Chiefs have done is incredible. So this is just the thing that I wanted to say. During the championship games, they post this stat where the Eagles franchise had been total to 8 NFC championship games in their existence. And then when you think about that the Chiefs have now been to 7 AFC championships in a row. It's
Incredible.
just insane. Just like this little run that they're on with all those other franchises that you mentioned. And if they win the game, I think they'll be in their own class. And you could make whatever argument you want, but obviously nobody's done 3 in a row, so it's their own class. But I don't know. I hope they lose.
Someone familiar with championship runs, Coach Kjar, that understands that kind of pressure.
How many of you won?
5 at corner and then 1 at Jordan.
Yeah, incredible, Coach. Amazing.
I'm Brady over here.
Yeah.
So you understand this pressure.
A little bit. It's tough for sure. Like as a coach, like it weighs on you for sure. Like definitely. And I think we've talked about it like with our kids when we go into those games about kind of embracing the pressure of doing it, which I'm sure those NFL guys, like they have a ton of resources, sports psych guys that are talking to them all about that. And they've been in it so many times. I think you learn to work through a lot of that or expectations that go into that. But I would put them probably right up there, like especially if they win it with anybody. I don't know if they're quite longevity wise to where the Patriots were over a long period of time. Same with the Niners through the 80s and some of the 90s, but they're close now. And if they win it, they're probably you could make a strong statement, just like Bryan said, I think where they have done something nobody else has done, so which separates them for sure a little bit. I think a lot of it is just, and I'm always biased towards quarterbacks, but quarterback play, having a super special guy back there that's going to be running the show and making plays. And from a leadership standpoint, I think everybody looks to that person naturally anyway. Even though, maybe you have somebody different defensively, but they have such an advantage there. I think that everybody overlooks. I know they think it's the refs, but I mean, all those big time franchises that have done well over a long time have had a good quarterback that's really special and going to be a Hall of Famer. So it's fun. The game's just great. It's like you get all excited. It's like it's the best holiday of the year. It's the Super Bowl as a football family. So it's pretty fun going into it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Coach Sutera?
So I'm going to first of all shout out the Buffalo Bills because my son CJ at home is a huge Bills fan. I'm going to tell you a little story about that. So Bryan coaches my son CJ in Little League football, and he actually plays at corner in the Little League over there. And he compared CJ to Bruce Smith about 3 years ago at their banquet, and CJ has loved the Bills ever since. So
that's awesome.
He's really sad right now. Okay, we're bummed at home. I grew up a Broncos fan, but I am cheering for, I was cheering for the Bills pretty heavily. So had to shout that out first. And again, I was bummed. I wanted to see them in it. But I think, like these guys said, I think you have to put the Chiefs in it, right, in that talk with those other teams that you talked about, is especially if they win it, I think right up there with those teams. I'm a defensive guy, so I'm going to shout out like their defensive coordinator.
Yeah, Spags is amazing.
It just seems like, and Andy Reid as well as a play caller offensively, it seems like every big moment, those guys have the perfect call. You saw it in Buffalo, you can say all the calls and everything, but he dialed up that one on 4th down that, Josh Allen gave him a chance, just not many quarterbacks would even have gave you a chance in that. Dials up that corner pressure, and then seems like Andy Reid has every great call and a big down. And that's where I'm going to shout those guys out. But yeah, I definitely think you got to put the Chiefs up there. If they win, I think anyway, they're right there with all those teams. So.
Okay. Just speaking to that, and just a couple of stats to throw as we get a little deeper, talk a little bit more about the preparation for big games and getting ready. And all of you have been part of that process. As a coach, just talk, and as a player, Bryan, talk and coach, talk a little bit about your mindset and preparation, about how you go about, one, getting your players ready, but really dissecting the X's and O's and figuring out what's the game plan going to be? How are we going to go about it? Because I think to your point, Coach Sutera, Big Red and the Chiefs, for some reason, it's like they have the answers to the test. They get in the games, and it seems like all the right play calls and on the Eagles side at the right moments, right? And you got to give Coach Sirianni and the Eagles a lot of credit. I mean, early in the season, all I heard was from Eagles fans is we got to fire the guy on how quickly football fans flip-flop.
Yeah.
But their offense and their ability to move the ball and run the ball and control the line of scrimmage. So going into the game, I mean, just looking at a couple of stats, it's interesting to me. The Chiefs really have not had that great a season offensively. Overall, they're only averaging 290 per game. That's 16th in the league.
They just barely scored their first 30 points.
Right. And so it's been subpar compared to other seasons. And then you have the Eagles defense, number one in passing yards allowed at only 174 per game. And then the Eagles offense averaging 366 per game on offense, and Chiefs defense overall giving up 320. So something has to give there. But going into the game, what are the types of things that you're thinking about preparing X's and O's wise and getting your players motivated? Maybe it doesn't take anything to motivate players to play in the Super Bowl, but I mean, it's a long season, right? And they're still human beings, and your body takes a beating. You play that many games. Brian, you've experienced that, like getting ready for one more week to get yourself up, even though it's a Super Bowl. As coaches and players, how do you go about getting ready for such a game like this?
Absolutely. Let the champ answer.
I think that probably for us, what we have tried to do, and I think most coaches do, is try not to make it too different than what you've already done. I think your preparation is going to be really similar to what you've done previously for your other big games, because even to get to that point, you've had to put a ton of work film-wise, game planning-wise, preparation-wise, looking at personnel, seeing where you can take advantage of things going into those type of games. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure that they've looked at and that they prepare for. And then I think handling those situations where there's going to be high emotions, high pressure, and being able to control that a little bit. And with the Chiefs have a ton of experience doing that. I think the more you play in those situations, you become better at them, which was probably why they've continued, or some of these dynasties with especially some of these good quarterbacks, they're able to kind of get into those good calls, maybe as we've talked about, or they see certain looks and you know, they've played in enough situations where they play really good situational football and they're able to, you know, manage and get through some of those things where they can keep having success. And I think it just stacks up on top of each other with experience, the more that they've done that. And it's you know, it's a big week, but I think those guys are obviously professionals and they prepare pretty close to the same way, I would think, no matter what the game situation is, and try to not make it any different than what they normally do.
Yeah, you look at the Chiefs, I'm sure they have this, probably a script heading into Super Bowl week. They're very familiar with this territory, right? Brian, what's your take on that?
Well, so you guys mentioned, I like to give credit where it's due. So the DC for the Chiefs is Steve Spagnuolo, Spags. I had him for a year as our DC in New York, and my rookie year, and then he was the head coach at the Rams for 2 years that I was there, and I hated him.
Wow.
And he did not like me either. It was a hate relationship that we had. Anyway, that being said, I will give him his flowers because he is absolutely dialed in the way he has that defense playing. And this is a couple years now. So the first couple championships that the Chiefs won was Pat Mahomes just making it happen. Just, you know, MVP, points, just unstoppable offense, Tyreek Hill, all that stuff, right? Starting last year, with their run last year, and then now carrying this whole season, so the win that they had last year and this whole season, it's the defense that has won it for them. Mahomes makes the plays that he needs to on third down, and nobody's better in the game on third down or scrambling or creating, but they're not putting up the numbers. They're just getting by, and the defense is just suffocating. And like Casey mentioned, that pressure that they called on the must-have-it play, I mean, it was phenomenal. And it confused Josh Allen, and it won the game for him. And he's just, anyway, so Spags, I'll give him his flowers. He's got it dialed in, and it's been impressive to watch the way that defense just plays. And defense wins championships. I think these are two defensive coaches here. I think they would agree with that. So
yeah, I love your comments, and I think to me what it shows is that, you know, and I hope our young people are listening to this, is that you got to prepare for the moment, right? And I know you guys as a staff, as coaches, as players, you prepare yourself physically and mentally so that when that opportunity comes, you're ready to go, full go, right? Coach Sutera, thoughts on that?
Just like Coach Kjar said, and I coached in, championship games with coach as a D coordinator. The biggest thing that's hard as a coach is to try to keep things the same and keep your emotions and be even killed. For me, I'm a pretty, get after it type of guy, high energy. And for me, I get excited about those games too. So keeping your players that way. And, you noticed it when I was coaching at corner was our kids didn't treat it any different. This year at Brighton, and our kids did a great job with the process all the way through, but you could tell they were a little bit more overhyped when we got into that moment because they hadn't been there. So it was tough. I think that's the biggest thing that gives a team that's been there that advantage because they've just been there. They know it's just another week of prep. If you make it too much different, then I think you play out of yourself a little bit and you don't want to do that. As far as like the game plan for like those guys right now, I think, and I'm kind of like cheering the Eagles on. I want to see them do it. I'm going to go back and coach is outnumbered with these defensive guys over here, but I'm going to say like both defenses, I think like Fangio and Spags, that's the matchup I want to see. I'm interested to see what Fangio does to like kind of limit Mahomes, but also I think like offensively, the Eagles running the ball and keeping the Chiefs offense off the field and not letting him make those plays because he's not on the field will be a huge one too. So I think in the game plan, if you're the Eagles, like you have to do a good job of like, running the football and controlling the clock. And they don't have a slouch at quarterback either.
Jalen Hurts is a good player.
Yeah, different. Sure. But like I think they got to do a good job of that. And then I'm just interested to see like on the Eagles side what they're going to do to limit things offensively for the Chiefs.
We can't wrap up our podcast without doing some picks, right? So Vegas has Kansas City as the favorite, which I think probably everyone would probably agree. But let's go around the room and just give us your final thoughts on the game and maybe where you're going to watch the game, what that's going to be like, and who you're going to go with.
Where am I watching the game? I don't even know where I'm at. I think in my house. I might be at my in-laws. We'll see. I haven't decided yet. I could be at a friend's house too. We haven't decided that yet. But the Eagles have their run game, I think, with Saquon Barkley is just different than what they've been previous years and what maybe teams have faced. And just it's been fun watching him kind of have a big breakout year. And they have two really good receivers, and they're still really good up front. Their defense has obviously been great. They're really good against the pass. They have a lot of things that are, going in the right direction for them. It's just going to be, I think, for me, tough for them to kind of overcome what the Chiefs have, their experience, and they are just a team. The way they've been winning games this year, they haven't been great on offense, but they have a guy that knows how to win at quarterback, and I think that they'll probably continue to do that. It'll be a fun game though, and I do think Saquon Barkley's kind of that piece that could make that game a little bit different depending on how well they can contain him. But yeah, it'll definitely be interesting for sure. But I think I've always done this whenever I make like Super Bowl picks. I always go with like the best quarterback predictably, who I feel is better out of the two, and I think it's pretty easy to follow that.
NFL definitely a quarterback game, but Saquon could be an X factor for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, Coach Sutera.
So we'll be watching the game at my parents' house, so my wife, my kids, and my brothers. So my son will probably be in his Bills gear, actually. He said, I'm wearing my Bills gear.
Bills Mafia will be proud.
Yeah, Bills Mafia. He's going to stick with that.
Funny.
My brother, Frankie, and Coach Lopez, our linebacker coach that worked with Coach as
awesome.
well. They're big-time Eagles guys. They're big-time Eagles fans. So I'm taking that into account, too. They'll probably be there as well. But I'm going to say, like I said, it's hard to go against the Chiefs just because of their play callers, their quarterback. Like I said, I think their defense is right up there with the Eagles, as far as the way they're playing. I'm saying though, like that O-line for the Eagles is really impressive, and Saquon, like I'm thinking they're going to control the clock enough and play good enough defense that the Eagles are going to get it done.
All right, picking the upset. I love it. All right, Brian, you're batting cleanup.
I'm just almost dittoing my partner here. I'll also be watching it at our parents' house. We always watch it over there. There's a big crowd. It's fun. And then also I'm going to pick the Eagles, but I'm going to caveat it.
Okay.
Mahomes is the X factor. He is one of the most special talents that the NFL has seen ever. And you could make an argument that he's the most talented quarterback ever. You could make that argument. He's that good. He's that special. And because of that, that's why they've won 16 or whatever it is, 1-score games in a row.
Yeah.
If you give that guy an inch, like he's just going to get it done. So my caveat is, if there's a circumstance where the Chiefs have the ball at the end of the game, like they're going to win the game. So the only way Philly's winning is they've got to establish a run, which I think and this is why I'm picking Philly, because I think they will. I think that they will be ahead and they'll hold on and grind out the clock and keep Mahomes off the field. Saquon is so dangerous, and all he needs is an inch, and it's a home run. And they're all offense. They got the best O-line in the league. I mean, the best O-line in football. I mean, they're road graders. And so, as good as Spags is at stopping the pass, it'll be interesting to see how they stop that run. I'm going to pick the Eagles. It's going to be a great game.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, if Saquon gets loose, like they'll win.
Yeah, all of those points are well said. And I was reading a stat, and I think it's still true. Going through the entire playoff run, Mahomes has yet to commit a turnover. So that's huge. I mean, you think about the turnover margin for the season, Chiefs are +6, Eagles are +11. So it comes down those few plays that make the difference. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Unfortunately, being a Raider fan, that's hard to admit, but I agree as well. I think it's going to be a heck of a game, and excited to watch as well as you guys. Thank you so much for being here on Connect Canyons today, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope all of you out there listening get to enjoy the game and a little bit of expertise from these guys. They're all loved and respected in Canyon School District, and we're just honored to have you guys join us today. So thank you, and wishing you all a happy Super Bowl Sunday with your families and the people you love.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect Canyons. Connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Canyons District, or on our website, canyonsdistrict.org.